I don't like, and it's not the fact that they sat out, Kevin. It's the off season. I don't like it. The season off from football. Now, you can train on the side and everything, but it's totally different whenever you get on the field. And I guess I have a problem with this. I go back to Maurice Clarett and Mike Williams. They took their season. They thought they were going to go to the NFL. The NFL said no. The NCAA said, well, you already declared for the draft. And so they took a year away from their careers. And those guys, I really do think, had they gone straight into it and not had an off season, they would have been able to continue polishing their skills for the NFL. But I don't like it that much. Like I always talked about Clowney's work ethic in college, I think those are things that you got to keep an eye on. But if a dude stayed prepared, if he was, and a guy coming off rehab's a little different for me because I think that those guys come in really good shape because they've been working with their rehab in a different manner, trying to do different things. But I don't love the person that took a year off from their sport.
I think Corey explained that pretty well. I have similar feelings about it. But I understand why the kids did it. They didn't do it because of coronavirus. They did it because most of the people we're talking about are guaranteed first-round picks. And so they were just like, look, I'm going to make sure I don't get hurt, and I guarantee myself a minimum of about $10 million in my life for football as long as I don't get hurt. And the easiest way not to get hurt is to not play this sport. It's a violent, brutal sport, that I really don't want my kids playing. I think it's interesting. I think for quite a few football players that end up making a lot of money playing football, they actually don't want their kids playing. That's how violent the sport is. They're like, look, I did it. I made money doing this crazy violent thing. You don't have to. But that being said, you do have to wonder, I think as a scout, how much do they love football? Because, I can just speak for myself. I loved baseball so much there was no way I was missing a season or missing a game if I was healthy. And so I get it. It's a different sport. Football is a much more violent, brutal, physical. You can die playing it. You can get paralyzed playing it. I know those are very rare, but that is the risk you take stepping on a football field every time. But they stepped out of the game for money. And so you just have to question when it comes to this, when it becomes a business, you really do have to love it to become your best self because you already are getting huge paychecks, and it's easy to just cash paychecks and not give it your all. I think that's why the Cowboys, and I think he's a good person, but I think that's why the Cowboys weren't that interested in re-signing Xavier Woods.
So there's a really interesting article in Sports Illustrated about this right now, and it name checks a whole bunch of the more marquee players who opted out, and several of them are targets potentially for the Cowboys, from Caleb Farley to Rashawn Slater, and even Gregory Rousseau, who I know Jeff Kavanaugh would just toss himself into a river if they selected him at number 10 in the first round. But Gregory Rousseau had a really interesting answer about this. He said, it's the same with every team he meets. He said, just different voices, but it's the same stuff every time. They'll go, walk me through your high school, walk me through getting recruited to Miami, talk about your sophomore season, blah, 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 blah. So, and then Russo knows what is coming next. They always ask why I opted out. He said, it's like clockwork. And then Caleb Farley added kind of onto that is he said, people are asking, are you really a team player? If you did, then why did you opt out? And then another player even said, why did you opt out? And are you going to do it again if things get tough? So it's really interesting. I understand for some of these players.
How'd they answer that question? Did they give their response to that?
They did. I have not. They did not particularly get into their answers, which I would be really curious to know.
Okay, and that's the thing. The scouting process is not it's not right. Okay, they poke and prod you in so many different ways during the combine, but we've talked with not only Broadus but Frank, and we've talked with other GMs about their approach during that time, and they all say they just want to see how people respond on their toes.
Yeah,
because S is going to hit them in the face when they get on their own in life, right? That's just going to happen. You get to work, and that day's not going to be great. How are you going to respond to it? You get to work, and something's going to be like life-crushing to you. How are you going to respond to it? And they want to see in a very short, small area how you react, what your heart rate looks like it is. Are you sweating right now when we're asking you questions? Do you do well in these types of circumstances? And so I understand it's like clockwork for them, and it's going to be like that. But it's like this for all the recruits because they are trying to test you. And that's what, Frank said he liked to sit in the back of the room, right? Is that what it was? Or was he the guy that said he liked to sit in the front of the room and ask the weird question? The one that really knocked people for a
I
loop?
think he was the guy who liked to ask that question to kind of throw you off. And it's interesting because, Mike, you said something that I think there's a pretty strong divide, but I don't really know how to determine that. And that's why, to Corey's point, I would love to know some of these answers. Is some of them for sure, I believe, saw a pathway to not have to put stress on their body for a year and know they could still get taken high in the draft.
Yeah.
But for a lot of these players, I am not questioning at all that it was the pandemic or the impact it had already had on their specific family or maybe them or the potential impact on them. Or I don't doubt that at all. And so I don't know how to delineate between somebody who's a fringe prospect versus somebody who knew they were going to go in the first round and they saw this as an avenue to get out of putting more on their body. And that's not to say that if you're not a first round pick, you didn't still have legitimate concerns about health issues with yourself, with your family, long-term, short-term. That's the thing, is to Corey's point. That's why I would love to know some of the answers. But this article mainly deals with the fallout and the way you get branded because you opted out.
And I think that's great. And then, I'll just give an example. Chase, the wide receiver for LSU, he could arguably be the first wide receiver taken off the board. Now, would he also say, well, another reason I opted out, if you're saying, hey, man, I just don't know if we can take you because you opted out. You got to give me a good explanation why you opted out. And we all know that it's not because of coronavirus. So if he were to say this, and what would your thoughts be if you were a general manager and you're strongly considering him and you need a wide receiver in the first round, and he said, well, my offensive coordinator left and he went to Carolina. The quarterback left because he was the first pick in the draft. I just didn't feel like the coaches coming in were the people that had my best interest at heart, and I just didn't feel like I wanted to go into their system, and I just thought it would be best if I worked my butt off on my own rather than dealing with a new offensive coordinator, a new quarterback. I don't know. What would you guys think if that was the answer on why, a guy like Chase sat out, who's probably going to be a top 10 pick? If he's like, everything changed on me. I didn't want to come back for that.
Yeah, I think I would actually prefer it if he opted out because of the health concerns. I think
he didn't.
I know, but I'm just saying I would prefer that. I think as the answer because I was.
Oh, you'd say I just didn't want to get hurt.
Yeah,
You'd
yeah,
I just didn't want to get hurt?
Because I was like, well, guess what? S is going to go wrong in your career, and how are you going to respond to it? So I think I would have preferred the other avenue.